I was born in Cuba to Cuban parents from Spanish descent. And when they saw the whole revolution coming and they realized that freedom in Cuba was threatened and that there were going to be a lot of repercussions coming along, my dad and my mom packed me up pretty much with the clothes on their backs, took a transatlantic flight, which was like 13, 14 hours back then, and ended up in Madrid. So in Madrid, my dad looked for work. He had challenges. We ate at soup kitchens. Not me. My mom scraped, every penny she had, and she would say she would buy me filet mignon, which I would spit up because I was barely a year old, and she would cry because it would spit up the food that they were eating at soup kitchens. But ultimately, because my dad had an engineering degree and he specialized in telecommunications, he had worked for AT&T in Cuba, as an undergrad and until he got his degree, he was able to get work at the Canary Islands. So the Canary Islands have a very strategic location, which happened to have a CIA agent who was Cuban American, kind of overseeing what was going on. The Cuban American agent approached my dad. He was building one of the first radar systems, or helping to build on the mountains in one of the islands in the Canary Islands. And the CIA agent said, "What are you doing here?" First, they thought my dad might have been a spy for Castro. Dad's like, "No, I'm here. Ultimately, my goal is to get to the United States because I have friends there. But, I'm working my way. I have this really great job now, and we're in an island. So living in the Canary Islands was very similar to living in Cuba. You have the warm Gulf Stream waters and, that lifestyle, that island lifestyle that my parents were more accustomed to. So the CIA agent tells him, "Oh, you have an engineering degree. The United States is wide open for engineers. We need more engineers. So fill out this paperwork," and within 2 weeks, we were in New Jersey. So it was, that's one of my missions in life. One of the things that drives me is that story, because I try to tell kids, students, young people, study math. It's a universal language. If you have the aptitude for it, study engineering, because you can cross borders. Everyone always needs engineers. And my dad never had to work, serving or in a kitchen or do all that hard labor. He never had to do that. And he always had a good paying job that he could use to elevate his family. So that's where my beginning is. So I grew Hoboken. My sister came about 2 years later after landing in Hoboken. She was a happy accident, but she was an American, right? So had a U.S. citizenship. I didn't. I ended up getting my U.S. citizenship when I turned 18. And so I went through the swearing-in ceremony and all that, which was really an incredible experience and made me learn a lot and appreciate what this country has to offer and what this country has given to my family. But in New Jersey, my dad ended up getting a master's degree because he wanted to, prove that he was worthy, right? That's one thing that at least Cubans in that era came. We all kind of had this need to prove that we were worthy to be in the United States. We didn't want to take anything. We wanted to make it on our own. We wanted to give back, do what we can to fit in, belong. And so he got his master's in engineering from, it was called like the New Jersey Technical Institute. Now it's part of the New Jersey school system. And he worked for the Bell Labs, AT&T, telecommunications, and ultimately his goal was to come to Miami to be closer, to the climate and everything he knew, and Spanish language, and eventually made it here with a transfer from what later became known as Bell South, is now AT&T again, and then I started my schooling in Westchester. Wow. Where we live.
No, I remember Bell South too. What an amazing story with the CIA agent.
Yes.
Right? So how has your cultural background influenced the way you approach leadership? You touched a little bit on that already, but elaborate.
So one of the things I try to do with our family foundation is to encourage minorities, especially in women, to study engineering and math, the STEM field, but particularly engineering, just because it opens doors. It really gives you, a passport to anywhere. And it helps elevate, families, because just one breadwinner can really elevate a family. And then it just, trickles down. It just helps with everything. So that was a major experience for me. My dad had 2 daughters, always treated us like not gender-based. Like he was actually very happy to have girls. He was like kind of a feminist in his era, not with my mom, but with but with us. And my dad always said that you never want to rely on a man or have to depend on a man. So he showed me how to change the oil in a car, mow the lawn, start up a lawnmower, all those things. And he admitted that he couldn't throw a ball. So he was very happy not to have boys because he was not athletic at all. And he could have never thrown a football or baseball with a son. So he was very happy to have a daughter. I grew up, he saved some money. And I remember he asked my mom, he said he saved like $70, which in today's world is probably like close to $1,000. And he wanted to buy a calculator. It was a calculator. All it could do was plus the four main functions, but it had a memory component, which was kind of cool because when you could save the memory and keep adding to the memory, and that was like, life-changing at that point. And so he bought himself, and that was like the one luxury item he had was a calculator. So he would teach me how to use a calculator. So I went to like elementary school knowing like how to use a calculator, which most kids or teachers didn't even know what that was. And that was the same with computers. We were always like on top of the game with everything that was like techie and technology. And that's how I grew up.
And that's how you were kind of guided towards STEM.
Yes, definitely to STEM, education. I think probably most Cuban immigrants will tell you that education is the path to freedom. And education is something no one can take away from you. And that happened to him. My mom did graduate from high school, which was rare for a woman, back in the day. And that experience of hers was also life-changing because she also valued an education. And we all grew up, and my sister ultimately became a teacher. I grew up, the school, my mom would tell me, your teacher is like your second mom. You have to do everything the teacher says. And, you follow the teacher. You have to learn as much as you can from everything that the school system has to give you. And I went to public school. And I made the most of it, had my AP classes. Ultimately, I was awarded a full scholarship to the University of Miami. So I had the Isaac Bashevis Singer Scholarship. And, it dawned on me many, many years later how a stranger, right, took a chance on me and gave me the opportunity to come to the University of Miami. And that, for me, that was like ingrained very early on. And that's why I think it's important to give back. And us Hispanics, we're very used to giving back to family. We're used to giving back even, friends that are like family and tias, primos, even far off families. But we're not so keen on like giving to strangers, at least not traditionally, unless it's like church, but still that's considered your family. So it's kind of cool to see that American spirit of philanthropy and of giving to strangers. Yeah, someone you don't know. So that experience of getting that scholarship, being able to attend without having to put that responsibility on my parents, and being able to maximize. And then I also felt like I had to give back. I graduated with a 4.0. I graduated in 3 years, and I was ready to hit the job market, become independent. I was ready, and I had a big advantage. My dad was an engineer, so I grew up knowing a lot of this math and computers that other kids just got their first glimpse, right, at the university level. So that was really important to me. And another thing that shaped my leadership style is Girl Scouts. So I was a Girl Scout from elementary school, and my mom was very forward-thinking at that time. And she said, you can be a Girl Scout, you just can't go camping. So a lot of girls around my generation were not allowed to be Girl Scouts at all because of the camping element. But my mom said, you can go, you just can't camp. And I'm telling you at the beginning, you're not sleeping over anyone's house, and you're definitely not sleeping in some campground where you're gonna get raped and killed and taken. And then I'm gonna have to suffer. Like, it was this whole story. And I speak to women my age, and they said, yes, my mom told me the same thing. And I'm very proud that I support also Girl Scouts. But Girl Scouts has come a long way. It went from being very nature and very giving back, and to being that same, but also with a lot of STEM. So there's badges for science, technology, engineering, math, different types of engineering, entrepreneurship, finance. So it's really come a long way, and I'm very proud that I've been able to help other girls, right, see that path or mentor them, and so that they can take that tradition, right, and expand on it.
Amazing story. Can you also talk a little bit about your time at Bell South?
Yes. So my dad had worked for telecommunications. That's how we ended up in Miami. And when I graduated, I was looking for a job. Unfortunately, South Florida back then was not the techie place, the more tech-oriented place that it is now. There was some aviation. There was Florida Power and Light was a big hire of engineers. But power wasn't my thing. I was more into the computers. And now FPNL is now the company I would have loved it to be back then, because now it's a tech company. But back then it was more of, the power and stuff. And even though I liked it, I didn't like it that much. I really loved the software engineering, the hardware. I really liked the computers, the programming. I was a pretty good coder, a programmer back then. And so the opportunity came to interview with Bell South, the company my dad worked for. And I said, I'd love to do that and follow kind of in his footsteps. He was very proud of me, except it was so I had a long commute, basically, to get to work every day. So that commute was really, challenging, but I did work there 3 years, had an incredible experience. I was in management. I did a lot of procurement. I did do a lot of tech work. And it was just fabulous. And then that's when I decided that I wanted to go back to school. I ended up going to Florida International University, to FIU, for my master's in engineering. I was 6 credits shy of finishing, because then I did a little pivot and I decided that I wanted to go to law school out of nowhere.
Exactly. That's my next one. So what inspired that transition?
So back in the 90s, early 90s, almost everyone was getting an MBA. So it was either an MBA or law school. And, I was always an excellent student. I've always done things in 3 years. Back then it was middle school 3 years, high school was 3 years. It was actually from 10th through 12th. And then I did engineering. I did it in 3 years. So I skipped, I fast forwarded a year. And then I said I could do another 3 years in law school. And I always figured law school was harder than getting an MBA. So I said, I'm going to take, the hard road. And I'm going to try, but only if I get a scholarship. I was always very strategic and very planned, because at that point I was getting married, and I said, I'm not imposing this, this tuition and this huge expense on a new family, on a new couple. So I interviewed. I did all that while I was working at Bell South, and I did manage to get myself a scholarship. I did really well on the admissions test, the LSAT. Having an engineering background, those tests come rather easy. So I got into law school, full scholarship, super excited. I said, I'm going to have the best life ever. I'm going to go to law school. School's going to be easy for me. I'm going to, go be a wife. I'm going to get my house all in order. Well, little did I know that I had not read a book, I don't know, since AP English in high school. So not having read, all I did was technical journals and books and coding. Everything was shortcut and math. I said, I need to get my act together. So I started reading. I would get dizzy reading the books. But then I realized that law is nothing more than engineering and math, but with words. You're solving problems, you're looking for solutions, but you use your words to make an argument, to be convincing, to try to persuade. So after I made that connection, then law school wasn't so difficult. It was just very time consuming, because you had to read all these cases. You had to prepare for class. Something that with math, once you do it, you get it. Here you have to read. No matter what, you have to read. So it was a very eye-opening experience, but one I enjoyed very, very much. And but it wasn't so easy on a new couple. so my husband and I really.
Sorry, we don't have any water. You said
no, we don't have any.
Sorry, I felt it creeping up, and I want to listen. All your stories are so amazing.
Oh.
Sorry, let me just. And I have something in the car, but I didn't take it. Sorry. So it wasn't easy on a young couple. Though,
okay, right? Yes. Going to law school was not easy on a young couple, because it required so much time commitment. And then I had my internships, over the summer. So it was very taxing. And then I ended up getting pregnant on my second year during finals. So that was like a big surprise. And, but it was, so I had my baby my third year of law school. And then that's my son, Alec. And so I walked with him up when I got my graduation, and commencement. I walked up with a baby.
Beautiful. Oh
yeah.
my God. that image is a beautiful image. Wow. I'm already dizzy by everything that you have done. And now we're going to pivot. As president of the Jose Milton Foundation, what are your primary responsibilities and what are your goals?
So my husband's family, his mother was always very philanthropic. I was very philanthropic. It wasn't called that back then. It was called giving back and doing good deeds, right? Like from a Girl Scout perspective. But I always was, student government president. I was always involved with Key Club, service organizations. I would do service projects all the time and just give back. I was very involved in the University of Miami also, the student leadership. And it was just part of my nature to be connected to my community and to give back. When my father-in-law established his foundation, at that point I had 3, toddlers, babies. I was very involved in their school. I had recently become involved with the Zoo Miami Foundation. Back then it was called the Zoological Society of Florida, because Miami in the 80s and more in the 90s, thousands, it was, cocaine, cowboys. It was the reputation was not that of a place where you wanted to raise a family. And I knew that I wanted to raise my family here. I was very connected, deeply connected to South Florida. And my solution was, I have to find a place I can hang on to, a place I can champion that talks about South Florida as a place for families. So of course, the University of Miami was my alma mater. So that's, it had become at that point a research university under President Foote. So that was on the rise. And then I thought the zoo. What's a better place than a zoo? And every great city needs a great zoo. And so Zoo Miami had I had done my superlative awards in high school. I was voted most likely to succeed. And we took our pictures at the zoo. I had gone to the zoo, with my parents many, many times. I went as a teenager. And then with the new zoo, this big zoo that was, world renowned, I'm like, I have to do something. I want more people to go to the zoo and more people to understand the value of also the science and technology and engineering and math that you get at a zoo. So it's kind of all connected. And so I helped them with their fundraisers. I ultimately joined the board, which was my first foray into, professional, let's say, philanthropy, to real philanthropy, and committed to the zoo. So I ultimately chaired the board of the Zoo Miami Foundation. Always committed. We always say it's like Hotel California. Once you are part of the zoo, like you never leave. It's like everybody keeps coming back. So much so that I just recently rejoined the Zoo Miami Foundation board after, oh my God, it's been like 10 years since I've been a board member. But we always have given back, supported the zoo, taken my kids to the zoo. Now I have a grandbaby, so take the grandson to the zoo. We host our corporate events at the zoo. So we're very committed to the zoo. And the zoo has been one of the highlights in South Florida to help elevate it to a place where, a place of gravitas, a place of family, of culture, of significance, and not just a party, South Beach party, place where you can buy cocaine. So.
Right. I remember the cocaine cowboy days.
Yep.
Now you're making me want to go to the zoo. I haven't
Oh,
been
you have
there
to.
in the longest time, And can you also discuss the mission of and the vision of the Cecil and Anna Milton Family
Yes.
Foundation?
So my father-in-law's foundation, the Jose Milton Foundation, spans 3 brothers and all the families. So my father-in-law recognized how I was like the most philanthropic at that point in the family, and how I was involved with the zoo. I was looking into So I was very involved, and he said, you are the one that needs to run my foundation. So he gave me a couple of test letters to write and a couple of little test gifts to make. His first gift was to Jackson Health System. So I wrote, I had the check drafted. I wrote the letter, the gift letter. I announced it, the whole thing. And he was very impressed, whatever that meant. And he said, I want you to run the foundation. And I want you to take everything I have done, because I've been so busy working, so busy making, my buildings and establishing ourselves as a Miami family. And I want you to take it to the next level. My mother-in-law was also very giving back, and he says, I want you to do what she did, but I want you to elevate that, and I'm giving you the resources to do so. So, of course, I mean, that was an incredible honor for me to be able to take the family name onto another level and to ensure that future Miltons had that background and had that connection and that groundedness to know that we came here as immigrants. You know, the Cuban experience, that Cuban immigration experience, that immigrant experience is so powerful that much of it is lost when the next generations come. And I am committed to making sure that my kids and my grandkids have that, like as if they were immigrants. I want them to feel like they have that experience and to always know how grounded they should stay. You know, don't let life take you on this journey thinking that you deserve it all. And think how the people behind you, the giants behind you, lifted you up so that you can have the life that we enjoy here in South Florida.
And how do you do that? I mean, do you talk to them?
Oh,
or do you,
constantly. So I learned many years ago from a finance guy. He says, the first generation makes it, the second generation kind of spends it, keeps it going, and the third generation completely squanders it. So my kids, from the time they were 4 years old, you're the third generation, and you on my watch are not going to squander this. I want you to keep it going. You need to educate yourselves. I want you to take other jobs, you know, so that you can have a different perspective. And I want you to come back to the company, and I want you to rise, and I want you to elevate it and make it great. And I want you to always keep in mind where you come from. And, you know, the island that right there, and all the people who are, you know, still suffering, and how we got lucky that we got out, and how you're lucky that both grandparents had vision. You know, my dad is an engineer who was able to lift us. My father-in-law is an architect who was, you know, it is a STEM or a STEM adjacent career where he could come on over. He was one of the first contractors in South Florida, building, just like he built in Cuba, making, you know, building, and then he had the great idea to keep some of his buildings and use them as rental properties. And so that's how this real estate portfolio grew and grew. And that's also why we're so connected to South Florida, because, I mean, our business here, our families here, our buildings are here, right? So it's the ground. It's part of us. It's part of us. It's part of us. So his thing was education. So the Jose Milton Foundation focuses on education, research, and quality of life revolving healthcare. So you need to be healthy to be able to have, you know, a good quality of life. And you also need to be healthy to be able to get an education. Because when you're in pain and you're not doing well physically or mentally, everything else just doesn't work, right? So health and education and then research that kind of connects them to is where that mission is. So Cecil decided that he wanted to form his own foundation for our side, you know, the family, our kids and grandkids. And we established the Cecil and Anna Milton Family Foundation. And we said, you know, let's be complementary. Let's not take the mission of the Jose Milton Foundation, because that's already ours anyways. Let's do something else. So we do first responders, and we also do conservation, which is for the zoo, you know, that type of environment conservation, more quality of life aspects that complement the education and the health. So pretty much between the two, we cover everything except for the arts, unless there's an educational component, which there usually is, right? With art and music and stuff, there's usually an educational component. And we've done some in that space, you know, especially if it has to do with schools. So we have the Jose Milton Foundation Recording Studio, which is in a public school in Miami Art Studio. And they actually offer free access to a recording studio for all students under 18, you know, all high school and middle school students in South Florida, in Miami-Dade County. So any school, whether you go to a private school or public school, you have access to this recording studio, and you get to come out with a professional quality recording, which in today's world is very valuable because you can actually sell it yourself, like on Spotify or on YouTube. You can put your music, and that experience of running, you know, students learn how to run the recording studio, which is technology, it's computers. So it has that STEM component, but also it helps students, even helps like lawyers, you know, kind of practice their speeches or, students in that respect. So I'm very proud of that. And then we have next to it, we have the Performing Arts Studio, which we named after my father-in-law. Again, the STEM component of it, and to be able to honor him in a public school. And we all know that, kids sometimes need a little extra motivation, a little nudge to go to school and to really enjoy that experience. And I do believe, the athletics, the arts, the music, all that helps shape, and helps kids get excited about school. Maybe math isn't the thing, but maybe, athletics or art. But you have to learn, the academic subjects in order to do those. So it all comes together.
That's amazing. Where is that recording studio?
So it's on West Miami, on 8th Street and 152nd, wow. Miami Art Studio. And it's in part of the school, but anybody can sign up to have a few hours. And it's expensive if you're going to get a recording. And for even some magnet programs, you need a recording, or to enter a contest, on YouTube, or you need a recording. Even to go to college, you need to show your portfolio. So this gives students the ability to be able to do that without shelling out maybe $300 to $500, $1,000, which some parents, obviously can't afford.
Super hands-on. That's great.
Yeah.
Like you said, you're covering.
Yeah, I cover almost everything.
So how do you balance your role across all these various organizations and ensure the alignment with your values?
So I think one of my superpowers is that I am so spread, so thin, that I'm able to make connections with them. So I really enjoy putting organizations together because, one, it makes my life easier because in one fell swoop, I, can help 2 or 3 organizations. And second, it helps them grow and it helps our community connect. So living in silos, is not the way. It's much better to be able to build upon each other and upon each other's strength and be a better community, a stronger, more intertwined community. So for example, I had a Red Cross event over at the zoo. So the zoo leadership happened to be all women a few years ago, including the zoo director. And I brought women from the Tiffany Circle of the Red Cross, which are women donors and women leadership, and Red Cross was founded by a woman. And we had an event at the zoo, and we talked about the elephants that were all girls. We had a bunch of female elephants. And so it was all like women power at the zoo with the Red Cross, for an event where we actually did letters to our military folks that are serving, thank you letters and stuff. So it was very powerful. So I kind of do things like that where I connect different groups. So having, being able to serve, it's my privilege to be able to serve on different boards. You meet a lot of really cool people that I wouldn't have met otherwise, and be able to really get a really good perspective of what the needs are of the community, but also how we can work together to solve them.
And you have mentioned a couple of projects here, are there any other projects you would like to mention that the Jose Milton Foundation has supported?
Well, yes. So our biggest donation thus far is to the Jackson Health System, our public hospital system, which is, by the way, very renowned. What they do, today I was at a board meeting for the University of Miami. I'm a trustee. And they were mentioning how the campus, the medical campus where Jackson is also partnered with the UHealth, with the medical system of the University of Miami. And that partnership is so unique in the world and so wonderful. And who reaps the benefits? We all do, our community. And people come from afar to be seen at Jackson and UHealth. And they were mentioning how it's God's work, what Jackson does, because no matter what your income level is or what your resources are, you get treated exactly the same. So my father-in-law, towards the end of his life, he had a few issues. He ended up at Jackson. He ended up having a tumor. He had to get removed, and he was seen by the specialist. He had his own room, and next to him were indigent people. And the doctors went from his room to the next room. He was like, wait, what's going on here? He's screaming, that guy is like, you can tell that he has other problems. and you're going to go see him now? Like, my doctor is, he says, oh, yes, I see everyone on this floor. You have, your VIP rooms, and you have your regular rooms, and your double. And my father-in-law found that to be just so impactful. And he says that the same expertise, he goes, yeah, I might get a bigger room, but that the same expertise, which is what counts, right? Comes, and it was a U Health doctor, comes to see me, and then helps other people who can't pay. He goes, I need to be in on that. I need to help that. And that's why our first gift, which, I made that first gift, was to Jackson. And then later on, when my father-in-law passed a few years later, but we named a hospital in the Doral area, the first Jackson hospital that was built. And it was actually built during COVID. It was one of the few medical institutions built like during COVID and finished during COVID. We called it the Jose Milton Memorial Hospital. So Milton Memorial for short. And it's beautiful. It's very tech heavy. They focus on the whole family as opposed to just the patients. So it's very family centric, latest technology, best nurses, best, doctors. So it's really, our honor and privilege to be able to do that in his honor. And you see it off the Palmetto Expressway. So it's the prettiest building in that area. So I'm very proud of that.
I have to look for all this now also. So any other projects that you would like to mention?
Let me see. I talked about the Performing Arts Center. I've talked about Jackson. I work with Girl Scouts. I'll talk about University of Miami. I'll talk about the University of Miami.
Yeah.
So, since my first experience on the receiving end of philanthropy was the University of Miami with my full scholarship. And then I received another full scholarship to go to law school. So scholarships, I find it to be very important because you attract, students who may not have seen your university as a possibility for them. And it really changes lives. So my daughter graduated from the law school, Miami Law School. She went to Georgia Tech first. I couldn't convince her to be a Kane at the beginning, but she knew she had to be a Kane ultimately because my two sons, Alec and Eric, did come here for undergrad. And so my daughter came to law school at the University of Miami, and she graduated 30 years to the day that I graduated. So I did endow a scholarship for a law student who focuses on tech law, intellectual property, the type of law that we both like, and endowed a scholarship for them. So that for me, that's very exciting. I'm also very involved at the College of Engineering, which is my alma mater, and my son Eric's alma mater, and he too got the same scholarship I did, the Isaac Bashevis Singer Scholarship. So you have to give back to an organization that gave you so much, right? When you can, and so I have a few endowed funds that talk about technology in the electrical and computer engineering space. So that's also a point of pride for me.
Beautiful. So, bigger picture, in what way do you think the Cuban American community has influenced the cultural and economic landscape of South Florida, and what responsibility do you feel to continue this legacy?
Well, the Cuban American experience is quite unique and very special because Miami in the 60s and 70s was really kind of a rundown, Evergladesy, kind of mosquito infested kind of place. Maybe some retirees would come here. It wasn't not at all as vibrant as it is today. And I really do deeply believe that the Cubans that came, and maybe it's proximity to Cuba. Maybe it's that it was open for opportunity. Maybe the palm trees. I don't know what it was, but this place was like a magnet to Cubans who ultimately became Cuban Americans and raised their families. And I do believe, from the start, Greenberg Traurig, a big law firm that started here. My father-in-law, who could have gone anywhere. I mean, he looked at Puerto Rico. He said it was too corrupt. He went to Mexico, and he says that's even more corrupt, and there's not that much freedom over there. Then he came to South Florida, and he says this is home. So having that attraction of South Florida, and that, we just turned. But UM is turning 100 years this year. Miami's young city. in relative terms. Yet it's come such a long way. And I really do believe that that Cuban diaspora that ended up here had so much to do with that. I mean, some of my professors at the College of Engineering were professors of Havana that were displaced in the 60s, and they came here to teach. Full of engineers, doctors, lawyers, professionals that came here and decided that, this was ripe. Miami was the place to be and the place to start a family and careers stuff. So that, and then the responsibility that we take, there's a saying that says, he who is much given, there's much responsibility, like to give back. You feel so privileged and so blessed to be here that it's almost natural to want to give back and to keep making this place we call South Florida, Miami, even bigger and greater, and make sure that that Cuban footprint is here. One of my favorite places at the University of Miami is the Cuban Heritage Collection. It's the greatest collection of papers, maps, even some artifacts, magazines from the Cuban diaspora experience and also from Cuba. So these papers and these documents were saved pre-revolution. They were saved and they're here at the University of Miami. I mean, if that's not impactful, I don't know what is. So I think Cuba and the Cuban people are all over here. My mom we keep our Cuban traditions, but back then you wanted to fit in more than stand out. And that was very important. That's why that I did Girl Scouts. That's why University of Miami. That's why I did all those things. And that was encouraged by my parents to kind of take every experience you have, every door that opens, peek in, see if you can make something out of it. So that's how I live my life, even to today. And I'd really try to instill those values, on my kids, and make sure that they instill those values on their kids. There's no such thing as like laying back. So my daughter right now is working in Atlanta at a big law firm. She ultimately wants to come back to Miami, but she says, no, I need to make my way. She went to Georgia Tech, one of the most difficult universities in the country or in the world. And her classmates would be like, I've seen where you come from. I see what you have. Why are you doing this to yourself? She said, she couldn't understand. She calls me, why are they asking me this? I want to be the best I can. And this is where I picked to be that. And yes, I'm working really hard to learn as much as I can. And it is hard. She goes, but isn't that what is expected? Like, she didn't get it. I'm like, no, honey, it's not. It's what we expect. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't grow up that way. Maybe they grow up a little entitled or I know, you have certain things that you feel entitled for and whatever, but you're giving back. My kids all give back. They're all involved in the community. They're all anxious, to get more education, to also give back to the family, to make sure that our name, the family name is strong. They take care of their grandparents. It's really, really fantastic to be able to meld that Hispanic family value system with the American dream and the American, like Tocqueville said that when he came to America, the thing that most struck him was how giving and how in today's world philanthropic Americans were. And I really do believe that that's the key to community and the key to progress and the key to keeping a democratic system going. Because if we help each other, no government can get in the way, right? There's no one that no Fidel can come in and promise you things, because we all know that it's not going to happen, right? So because you rely on each other. You don't need some guy from the mountains coming down and telling you what to do.
Yeah, I think it's so important what you just said, and that also again in these times, that the community, the stronger the community is, the less you're
you're susceptible to
outside influences.
Exactly.
So wow. So how do you measure the success and impact of your initiatives that you support?
Yeah, that's really a difficult question, because you can try to do big things and impact a lot of people in small ways, or you can be more one-on-one. So I've felt a lot of success in my one-on-one engagement. So for example, I give scholarships to the graduates of the 5,000 role models. 5,000 Role Models, it was founded by Congresswoman Frederica Wilson. I think, I'm not sure, I think she was already a principal, but she saw firsthand how she calls boys of color were kind of being left behind. And she said, I need to do something about it, because she had a son. And she started with 500, now it's 5,000. It's really a lot more than 5,000, but it's a cool name and we'll stick with it. So these young men of color, they're like, just a little help, a little nudge. And so when I give scholarships, I don't just say, oh, here's a check, or I'll give you your institution a check, go with it. I'm like, no, I'm giving it to you over 4 years. You're gonna show me your transcript. You're gonna show me you're making the most of it. You know, I'm thinking back how I felt when I had a scholarship. And if you have an issue, come to me. And I introduced them all to each other. So we built this community of Milton scholars, I call them. And then I have some Girl Scouts that I give scholarships to, and they all connect. We're all connected, you know. And if they have questions, my son has also helped, like, mentor some of them. And one young man comes up to me and says, no one has ever taken an interest in my education and my growth as you have. And, you know, he ended up getting a master's degree in the 4 years. You know, he went to FIU, and he bought his house, you know, and he's still 20-something. Bought a home, you know, Haitian born. I'm like, that's success, right? Because I know that him and his family and whoever comes after him, his children, they're all set. Like, and he understands the value of philanthropy and the value of giving back. And that's so important. And you don't have to give back big. You know, it used to be called acts of kindness, you know, helping a stranger, helping someone. Those little acts can really be very meaningful to someone who needs it at that moment. And it can really change your whole outlook and your whole attitude. And that immigrant experience is very powerful, and it needs to be shared. Because sometimes, you know, my daughter told me this. She goes, Mom, here I am in Atlanta. These people are like 5th-generation Americans. What's wrong with them? Like, they're so lazy. Like, I'm here like, that's because you don't have that fire. They don't have that fire of that being grateful to the United States. You're in the best country in the world. You know, they're just looking for problems. They're looking at things in a different perspective. You're looking at it, wow, my life could have been so much different. So different if my parents, my grandparents didn't take that risk. You know, at 20-something years old, right? All these hopped on a plane, you know, left, not knowing what the future would bring, just with their education in their pocket. That's it. So it's very powerful, and it's hard to convey that feeling, but I think you know, I think with pictures, with talking, with stories, with this oral history project, I mean, that's exactly what you share.
No, but you're conveying it. I mean, I think you're conveying. My husband is Cuban, by the way, too.
Oh.
But Montreal, he just came recently, you know. But yeah, no, you're totally conveying it. I'm getting goosebumps. So again, here as gear change, as a chair of Jackson Health Foundation, what are some of your key priorities?
So I'm a past chair now. So yes. So when I chaired the Jackson Health Foundation, first of all, it was an incredible privilege to do so. But it was right. A COVID creeped up on us. So we kind of had to do a pivot. But I'm very proud that Jackson was one of the big vaccinators of South Florida. So what they did with vaccines, and I was also very proud that even though I was on the board and I was a big donor and whatever, they did not I did not get my vaccine until legally I was able to, which a lot of other places didn't. They kind of gave their donors, you know, but I was like, no, I'll get it when it's my turn. You know, when my parents, it was their turn, I was able to get theirs, my in-laws, then it was my turn, and then when it was my kids' turn, we all waited our turn, as it should be. So that made me very proud that they were community first. and not so much, who the donors are. But so that was one of the things that I spearheaded. And another thing I'm very proud of, we got a new development person, a new fundraiser. At the same time, the University of Miami Health System got a fundraiser. And I told ours, I said, you need to reach over there. And there's a great partnership between the two. We're not competing against each other. We make each other better. So get a meeting before she gets too busy, both of them, and do it. And since then, it's been very fruitful. That relationship of, hey, there's a donor that might be more suited for you, and there's a donor more suited for you, and then let's work together to bring some bigger donors to help, elevate this campus. And, like I said, it's all for the better of our community. And those of us who might be able to pay, and those of us who might not be able to pay, but we all deserve to have the best healthcare system available.
And what initiatives have you championed during your tenure as the president of the Citizens Board?
All right, so Citizens Board was actually my first connection back to the University of Miami. My son was looking to universities, and he really wanted to stay in Miami. It's very challenging to get into UM. And he's not a great test taker. He was great grades, great GPA, great classes. But his SAT, it was good, but it wasn't, every year it just keeps getting harder to get into the universities. So he was waitlisted, and I have a meeting with someone. I said, why did my son not get in? I mean, he's actually really committed. He's a great student. He'll be involved. And I'm an alum. His dad is an alum. I mean, what's going on? And then they explained to me the whole thing. And then they said, well, you can change things. Why don't you join the Citizens Board? So I said, I'm absolutely going to change things. I want more kids from Miami, which is still kind of a side mission of mine. It's to make sure more kids, local kids, have the opportunity to come to the university. Ultimately, he was admitted in January, so he did come to the university and very successful, has a master's also from UM. So it all worked out, and I was lucky to learn about the Citizens Board. So ultimately, I rose through the ranks, volunteering. They call it volunteer leaders, and I was able to become president of the Citizens Board after a pretty long trajectory, several years. Again, it was right when COVID was ending and we were getting back to in-person meetings. But one of the initiatives that I still do today with some of the other women on the board is try to get more women involved with Citizens Board. So we have like a women's group that we have a gathering once a year and see how we can better serve the university, as women. Because as we all know, women drive philanthropy. And usually behind every man who gives, there's a woman kind of saying, yes, we need to support. Women and daughters are very influential in that space. So we're going to, we try to do our part to see how we can best help the university.
You have done so much. The next thing we're talking about is the Red Cross.
The Red Cross.
So how was your experience serving on the board of the Red Cross?
So I'm still on the board of the Red Cross. Red Cross Miami is an amazing organization. Red Cross Worldwide is an amazing organization founded by a woman as well. So the Red Cross, especially in today's climate, changing climate and the way that we're headed to sea level rise, heat, warnings everywhere, fires like in the West Coast. With all that, the Red Cross has never been more needed because they really do amplify the power of volunteers and donors, put that all together, and are very efficient at helping people get back on their feet after a disaster. And it doesn't have to be a big disaster. They also help with home fires. So it's a funny story how I got involved with them. We have rental apartments, and we have fires all the time. It used to be candles. People would love to hide candles and by the curtains, fire. Now sometimes they leave the stove on. It's happening less and less, thank goodness. But we have home fires. And my husband would tell me, when I go to a fire to help, because you have the sprinklers go on, then everything gets flooded underneath, and you have all the neighbors have to evacuate the building. It's a big deal. And then he goes, and then I'm dealing with the screaming kids and the parents. He goes, I'm so lucky to have the Red Cross go and help them. like support them, understand what they're going through, give them blankets, give them, they give them like money for a night at a hotel so that they can spend the night somewhere because their home is gone, right? And he says the Red Cross helps us and our residents so much. He goes, and you're not involved in the Red Cross. I'm like, oh, shame on me. You're right. So I sought out the Red Cross. I said, I need to be involved with you all. And so I ultimately did, and I became a donor. And then, I see all the amazing things they do after a hurricane, after the home fires, how they train people in CPR. So we actually engage them to train our team members into CPR training, AEDs, first aid training. And we actually had one of our team members save a little boy from choking. So he got the Lifesaver Award. So it's really valuable, and we are so lucky in South Florida to have the Red Cross. A funny story that connects this. So I had a friend whose mom passed away. She's Cuban American. The mom was Cuban. And the friend finally, after a few months, started looking through all her mom's papers. And she says, I have this beautiful collection of papers and I just don't want to hog them up myself. I want to share them with the world. She calls me, what do I do? And I go, let's go to the Cuban Heritage Collection and let's donate them. See what happens. In one of those papers was this beautiful postcard showing Red Cross volunteers marching with the mayor of that city in Cuba with their white, there used to be these white, with little white hats and the cross, and they were marching because it was all the women together were helping that community after some big storms or something. So that postcard, and her aunt was part of that, and it had writing in the back. So I was like, wow, look at this. Even in Cuba, the Red Cross was a force, right, to help people, and they gathered volunteers, just much like what we do now. Sometimes technology can't fix everything, right? You need people on people. You need people to go and help and just be there.
I had no idea that the Red Cross was in Cuba. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I know.
So now it's in the collection, all these.
Yes,
Yeah, wow,
yes,
great.
yes.
Okay, and what challenges have you faced as a woman in engineering and law, and how did you overcome them?
Since my dad was kind of a feminist and I grew up kind of a tomboy and doing all kinds of stuff, I never really saw myself as a woman in engineering. I mean, I remember walking into some engineering classes, which about halfway through the semester, I realized I was the only woman in the room because I really always gone along with men. Like I never really saw a gender disparity kind of thing. So I never felt that I was a woman in engineering. I just felt that I was an engineer. And then in law school, actually, we had more women than men. So there, it actually felt kind of weird because it was the other way. But I've never, that wasn't a thing for me. Like I didn't, now it's like people say, oh, I need to see someone like me in that field. I actually thought it was kind of cool not to see someone like me somewhere and be the one to be there. So I worked for Bell South. I might have been the only woman. My one experience, I walk into a room, I'm a manager. The head, the senior manager of the team leader had a meeting. He had a monthly meeting or a weekly meeting on Mondays. I walk into the meeting. This is my first meeting. I'm at that department. It's operations. So I walk in, and then he starts saying cuss words. And then he looks at me and does and I'm just there. And he says, I need to change my language. He was like a Cuban guy. I need to, in his deep accent, he goes, I need to change my language. Now we have a lady in our room. I said, no, don't mind me. Please go at it, but you really should. Not because of me, but you really should. And from then on, the meetings were much more graceful, much more efficient. No one was, posturing, So I thought that I brought a lot of sanity to those meetings. And I wasn't dismayed by it. I thought, I added a little value there and things proceeded, great. So that was my only experience where being a woman kind of stood out. And in the philanthropic world and on boards, I have a few boards that are more male-centric, but I think it's pretty even across the board. There's a lot of women on a lot of boards.
And how about how have you seen the representation of women and minorities in STEM fields throughout your career? What's happening?
So that's one of my goals, is to increase the number of women and minorities in STEM fields, especially engineering. And I'm always, when anyone will tell me, sometimes I'll teach a class at a high school for an organization, and I'll at the end I'll ask, so what are you all studying? So someone will say, no, I want to study biology because I want to get to med school. I go, yeah, that's great, but you should consider biomedical engineering or any engineering. It's your quickest way to med school. They look at me, they go, you think I could do engineering? I go, you absolutely can do engineering. And I've had kids change their majors because of my little talk to them. So I just think that they don't find it to be available to them. And once you say, no, but I have an engineering degree, and then I have a lot of friends that are women who do these talks that are engineers, and other girls get so inspired by them that it's really amazing, because they said, I've always liked the concept of building things and making things and solving problems. I just never thought of becoming an engineer. So for me, it was easy. My dad was an engineer. It was like, you got to be an engineer.
So you basically answered this, but what advice would you give young women that want to enter engineering and law now today?
Well, I would tell them, first, take the hardest avenue you can so that you can stand out, because standing out is actually good in a good way, right? Stand out for being entrepreneurial, for being, thinking outside the box. For pushing boundaries, right? Stand out that way, and don't just follow the curriculum or the path already set. Differentiate yourself, and that's how you can really get ahead and make relationships. Especially in South Florida, it's all about relationships. I don't want to say it's about who you know, because that's not true. It's about the relationships you build and nurture. The quick little text that you shoot someone, the gratitude email, the little call that you make, the meeting up for coffee real quick. If you don't have a lot of time, I do this. I usually get groups. I can't meet with you one-on-one, but I have this other two people that I've been wanting to meet, and there's some synergies here. Let's all meet together. And so it's, or take advantage of a little time before meeting or a little time after meeting to get to know someone. So it's really all about networking and groups, but in a very organic, authentic way. Don't meet me because you need something from me, right? Meet me because you want to get to know me. And then you can ask me for something. But, let's get to know each other first.
And how do you see the future of women in STEM? How do you see that?
Well, I see it as very promising with organizations like Girl Scouts that are very STEM focused. Our school system is extremely STEM focused. Our superintendent is very keen on STEM. Robotics, taking away the taboo. I think if Apple has done anything for us, it's shown that technology is really important. It's in the center, and you want to be part of it. And you need to at least know how to use it as a tool. But it'd be kind of cool to get in on artificial intelligence. It'd be kind of cool, to see how you can add to that and make it better. So I think, I think being a nerd is kind of, cool and sexy now, right? It's not, it was challenging growing up as a woman engineer. I mean, guys would date me. They would ask me where I was engineer, and then they would turn around and leave. So I was like, fine, I didn't want you either. So, you can't handle me, it's kind of thing. So that's a little bit more challenging. I think now in today's world, I mean, my daughter in her ecosystem in Atlanta with a lot of Georgia Tech, like they all love Georgia Tech. Like they go, oh, woman engineer, that is so cool. Like, I want to get to know you better. Like it's very cool to be able to handle yourself in the tech world.
It's funny. It's true. It's cool to be a nerd now.
Yes.
So we don't have that much more time because you have a hard out. I just want to make sure that we're getting to the 2 points that is important for you. For example, I think what significant challenges have you encountered throughout your philanthropic work?
The biggest challenge I encounter is trying to make the most out of. I mean, we have a lot to give, but there's so much need in our community, and getting to know these needs and finding the most efficient way to solve these problems. And sometimes you have to solve these problems one person at a time. And that's very expensive. And that takes a lot of resources, but it's worth it. So I guess that's my biggest challenge. And I haven't solved the challenge, but I know that working with other organizations and other nonprofits, sometimes I go into, I'm in a panel and I go into a panel discussion. I said, there's some things coming from an oppressive government system. There's some things we don't want government to do, right? But if we don't step in and let the private sector, let the philanthropists come in and fill that void, then government will have to step in. We don't want that. So we need to, I want my tax money to stay in South Florida. Well, how does that mean? I'm going to make donations. I want to give it here to improve our life, first at home, and then we can help others. But if you don't have home, if home isn't good, right? La casa, if home isn't good, what else is there? I mean, there's not. So everyone should take care of their home. And for me, my home is like all of South Florida. That's my home. And that's where, and then by extension, Florida, then you can keep going. But it's really important to make sure that everyone is lifted, everyone feels empowered, everyone feels like they can give back, everyone, feels. And this thing about sense of belonging, a sense of belonging, but you have to make the effort to belong also. You can't just say, oh, they didn't welcome me. No, insert yourself. Make yourself be welcome. Do something of value that you're recognized for and that people want you.
And what emerging issues and causes are you passionate about that you see for the future that are coming up?
I am worried about our democratic system. There are so many existential challenges and even challenges from within that are going to, our system of democracy, capitalism. So I'm worried in that front. And then on the other side, I'm worried about the environment. Microplastics, all these chemicals that are in the air, the forever chemicals, all that it's worrying me. Now I have a grandson and I'm like, so we give him milk in a plastic bottle. The formula comes in plastic canisters. The nipple they use is like the silicone, but we really don't know what's in there. He's putting everything in his mouth. It worries me, but I know that we need plastic because without plastic, we can't have health. I mean, you can't sterilize every glass thing. We're too many people, right? So we need plastic, but there has to be a way to control what goes in our landfills and in our environment and then comes back to get us, right? So those two challenges I worry about. Yeah.
So do we still have time? Can we talk about United Property Management?
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that?
Sure.
Okay.
So United Property Management is the company under Jose Milton and Associates that my father-in-law first founded. So we build rental communities and some condos. The condos, of course, you build them and then you sell them. But the rental communities, which is the big majority of the family business, we build and we keep, and then we rent. So United Property Management is that arm that rents, maintains these communities. And it's very cool because I've seen the transition from when my father-in-law started building these small kind of properties and rent them. And he always loved big closets. So he was very innovative in his floor plans, but not innovative in a weird way, innovative in a practical way, more practical and more family oriented. And to see how much that's come, like now the units have washers and dryers, to see how much, like, it's almost like people demand more now, and we're able to give them more. We have over 9,000 units in Miami-Dade, Broward. We have throughout Florida. I'll say throughout Florida, but most of them Miami-Dade, some in Broward. And it's just what's great about it is that I've been able to incorporate this philanthropic mindset into our community, into our community through the company. So our team members do philanthropic activities with us. So our team members wrap presents. We do a big drive for toys in all our communities for Jackson's children and their families who are being cared for at Jackson and at Holtz Children's Hospital and at the Milton Memorial Hospital. We gift wrap. We send we send manpower to gift wrap, a lot of the gifts. We support the Red Cross. We have, events that the Red Cross does. We'll buy tickets and invite our team members. One of my favorite events is Feast with the Beast at Zoo Miami, which is an evening where you go and you sample food and drinks from a lot of Miami, South Florida restaurants and such. And we take like 60, 70 of, it's almost like an invitation to everyone. And we, pay for their tickets and they come and join us. We support Zoo Run, different runs, the corporate run. So we do use these as bond building experiences for our team members. And also it's a way for them to connect with the family. Right? So you can have, someone who may have started with the company a couple months ago already direct access to the CEO and the upper management because they come to one of these events. So it's been really cool to be able to leverage that. And I call it like my other bucket. So we do a lot of work above and beyond the foundations, and I do it through what I call it corporate social responsibility through our company. So we're able to, help the police, help the Police Officer Assistance Trust, the Hispanic Police Officer Association through our company. Also because there's a business reality that we need safe streets. I mean, it's a business reality. So it's a way that I can expand how much I have to give and my resources. So I tap into every possible resource I have, at my disposal so that I can help as much as I can our community grow and thrive.
Okay, so it's yeah.
It should be, I should wrap it up.
I just have
Yeah,
because
it's
this is like
really
my
long.
personal because
Okay.
I spent the last 6 years about talking about the affordable housing crisis, and like there is this question here: how does United Property Management contribute to the affordable housing in South Florida? Because you can. I just realized 9,000 units. That's
Yes. So we have. We like to think of ourselves that we have a lot of workforce housing. I like to call it workforce housing because affordable housing is more like lower end. And what I really want is to help families, especially young families, young professionals, or young just people who are workers, who want to work. I want to help the teachers. We have actually special rates for police, first responders, teachers. And during COVID, we actually gave, I know it was like 100 apartments to employees of Jackson because they didn't want to go home after treating COVID patients. So we said, you don't need to go home. You don't want to infect, now you're feeling bad. We want to so we would give them apartments so that they didn't have to go home. And they would be able to come to the apartment and take a shower, and live there, on a floor. We kept them separate from everyone else in different apartment buildings we had. Because we had the available apartments. And I go, why not? And then at the end, it actually made business sense because some of those stayed. They loved living there so much that they said, but I would get the most beautiful, warm letters thanking them, that it gave them so much peace that they could help more in the hospital because they knew they didn't have to go home and possibly, transfer the disease, COVID to their family members.
wow.
So.
This could be like a 3-hour interview.
Oh, yeah.
Is there anything? No, because your life is amazing. Anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to add? It's like the last. I think this is the last question we have in the time.
I think I've covered everything. I mean, we didn't do conservation per se, but I did touch on it.
What policies we didn't cover that. What would help South Florida the most? What policies? But whatever you think is
yeah.
the thing.
No, I think given what we're doing it for, I think just making sure, that. Well, I do have one more thing to say. Okay, so during COVID, I was doing a lot of interviews, like on Zoom and on TV, just some interviews about what was happening in South Florida and how my philanthropy was helping. And one of the things I realized is that it was very important to make people aware of the philanthropy that Cubans are participating in. Because we have the reputation, all Central and South America Hispanics have the reputation of only giving to your family and to your church, it's kind of a little closed circle. And we don't give to strangers as openly like writing a check to an organization to help others. That's a little that's not ingrained in us. It's not part of that Hispanic culture. Giving anybody a plate of food is, or helping someone at church, but it's not. It's different. So I wanted to make that known, and that's one of the reasons that sometimes I feel a little odd in talking about my philanthropy, but I want everyone to know that Jose Milton, Jose with an accent on the E, even though Milton is like a British name, but so my father-in-law was Lebanese, and then his family went to Cuba, actually by mistake, but they went through London, and in London they changed their name from Milham to Milton. So it was a British name, and they landed in Cuba, and that's where, he grew up. He was born in Cuba and raised, and his 3 brothers and sisters. And but Milton stuck, and I said, I want to make sure that Jose, always put the acento in Jose, because I want them to know that he's Hispanic, that we're Cuban, American, Lebanese, the Cuban, Lebanese, American family, and that a Cuban family, from Cuba, how much impact that we're having here, and how grateful we are to South Florida for everything it's allowed us to build, and how we want to give back, because we think everyone should have that opportunity.
I know, so just say your name and what you do again one more time from the start.
Okay, Anna Veiga Milton, and I'm the president of the Jose Milton Foundation.